So wanted to introduce our guest this morning, Mr. Gerard Balan. We're gonna get to know him a little bit better. So tell us about you and tell us about your practice, a little bit about yourself and the services you offer. Just kind of get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak, Beverly. I really appreciate it. So yeah, my name is Gerard Balan, and I've been a psychiatric nurse practitioner now for 16 years, worked in mental health for over 20 years, and I just really love this profession. I've been working as a W-2 employee for 16 years, and I decided about 2 years ago that I really wanted to branch out and do something a little bit different. And so I'm in my private practice. I've been doing it now for the past year, and I actually left my full-time job last week, and I'm now doing it full-time this week. So that's really, really exciting. So it's a predominantly virtual practice where I see a lot of my patients virtually, but I do rent out an office at least 1 day a week because we're still awaiting the DA's final rules, and I don't know how often I'll need to see people in person. So we have that option. I have some patients who prefer to be seen in person too, and it's good to be able to try to meet everybody where they are. So I call it Telemental Associates.
Telemental Associates. Where are you located, Gerard?
Minnesota.
Minnesota. Okay. It's cold up there right now, huh?
Oh, well, today it's 29 degrees, so it's actually spring weather. But the last several days, it's been literally a high of -5.
It's colder there than it is in Alaska. Right now in Alaska, it's 40 degrees.
Yeah, but we got a lot more to do here than Alaska. I don't know. I'm actually going to be vacationing Alaska in a couple of months, so check back with me and I'll let you know. I've heard Alaska.
You'll have to reach out. You'll have to reach out. I'm up here, so
yeah, absolutely.
Show you around. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive that after a year you're able to leave. I know it's kind of different for everybody, you know, when you can do that. So I know that makes you feel really, really good. So what made you decide to start your private practice? To get away from the 9 to 5, what was the reason there to start?
It was really a mixture of different things. I think now that I'm in my 40s, like I think a lot of people, you kind of think about what do you want to do the rest of your life, right? Your life is approximately 50% over. If you're lucky, you have a little bit more time, right? But most people are passing away in their 80s, so your life's half over. And this is what I dedicated my adult career to, being a psychiatric nurse practitioner, working for different companies, and I was really overall happy where I'm at, but I just felt like I wanted something different. I wanted a different skill set. And I've wanted to actually do a virtual psychiatric practice actually since 2012. When I got serious about doing this a year ago, I saved my old notes when I was looking into it. And I couldn't believe how long I've really had this dream. And at the time, I decided against it because insurances really weren't paying for virtual appointments. It was not very financially feasible. It'd be like a tremendous risk to try to go cash only with that. But the pandemic just fundamentally changed everything. So now with the pandemic, insurances are paying for virtual appointments. And thank you to a Minnesota law, they're required to pay the same amount for virtual versus in person. And so there's a possibility of really making this viable. And then also because of the pandemic, as awful as it was, one of the good things is that now patients are used to virtual appointments. They're used to things like Zoom. They're comfortable with it. They're used to using their insurance to do it. And so what was once a dream now really started to become much more viable.
Nice. Yeah. Again, that was a really good thing about COVID. I mean, it was a very bad time, right? But also very changing time for healthcare and telehealth. And I think some of the like government run facilities like, you know, Medicare and that kind of thing are still struggling a little bit with trying to get all the rules and everything in place. But overall, I think it was a great thing for patients because you know, they were able to stay at home and see their providers, and that was just something very different for them as well. So if you could go back in time, what advice would you give your younger self about starting your private practice?
Do it sooner than I did, I would say. I don't know if I would have been able to do it as far back as 2012, but I think it's something I could have looked at doing, like, you know, even 5 years ago. Could have been really viable, at least even on a part-time basis. I think the level of autonomy you have is incredible. The financial incentive is incredible too, right? There's obviously a lot of the tax benefits of being a business owner versus a W-2 employee. You have a lot more control over your schedule, especially as a business owner. You really get to set the tone for your practice, like to have your values be in the DNA in the practice and to build it from the ground up, which for me is really, really key and really, really important. So I think the first thing I tell myself is, what took you so long?
I hear that a lot. I hear that a lot. I think we all have that inherent fear of taking that leap and just doing it, and
Right.
I had a provider one time, she was really scared about Jen. And I said, what's the worst thing that can happen? That you don't do well, or you decide you don't like it, then what? You go back
Yeah.
to working for somebody else. It's not, you take all that stuff as a write-off and you go back to working for somebody else. I said, but what's the best thing? And she said, well, it could work. I said, yeah. And then, you'll be kicking yourself for not doing it sooner. So yeah, I
Absolutely.
think taking the jump, man. Sometimes you just got to take that leap, take that first step. So starting any business comes with its challenges. What are
Mhm.
some of the biggest challenges you say that you faced when you started your private practice?
Well, part of it was just taking a leap and starting it, right?
Mhm,
Because when you're in a W-2 position, for the most part, you're pretty happy there. You're doing well there. Everything is really set for you. And
mhm,
so you can just simply continue doing that in perpetuity, and you'll be fine. When I think when you start private practice, there's always a risk, right? There's a risk of, what if you spend a lot of money, it doesn't work out? What if it causes a lot of strain in your home life and in your marriage, for example? What if it's too much for you to handle and then you're facing burnout? I think
mhm.
having the courage and the confidence to do it, I think was probably like the first major hurdle from there. Um, I think the second hurdle was understanding that you have to spend money to make money. And so I'm someone who tends to like to be very hands on.
Mhm.
And, I have a pretty ridiculous work ethic. I get that from my parents. But at the same time, I need to understand that I need help. And so, at first I was thinking about, okay, I'll try to do my own billing and try to do a lot of the other stuff. And I realized that's not really a good way to spend your time. It's
No,
better to really um, outsource that to other people who are very skilled at it and do very well at it. And for you to focus on what you do best, and that is seeing your patients. And then, of course, outside of that, learning how to grow, sustain your business.
very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think those are learning when to get help is really big. And then especially for those of us, sounds like you're kind of like me. I like to have my fingers on everything, have you a little bit here, a little bit there, so that I know what's going on all the time. But after a
Mhm.
while, it gets to where you can't have that, right? You can
Right.
kind of have an overall general, but you got to trust other people to do what they're supposed to be doing. And them, stay in their lane, you stay in your lane, and everything runs better that way. Because when you try
Right.
to control everything, you end up not controlling anything. You're just kind of, it's kind of a little chaotic. But like you said, I mean, you went to school to see patients, right? You see and treat patients. You didn't go to school to be a biller. You didn't go to school to be a virtual assistant or anything like that. Knowing when to outsource those things and get the help, I think is very, very important. And
Right.
some providers forget that because you're expensive, right? If you think about how much you are an hour compared to someone that you could hire to come in and do that kind of stuff an hour, it makes more sense for you to see patients and pay for that and have somebody, and gives you more work-life balance at the end of the day. Because after doing this for a year, it's a lot. It's doing
Yes, it is.
day, after you're seeing your patients, you still got work to do because not only you have charting, you got a business to run. So it's definitely not for the faint of heart. Um, so what would you say the biggest misconception is about starting your private practice, if you had to say one?
Biggest misconception. I think that you're on your own and there's not help out there. I think one thing that I have seen from when I first started doing this, thinking about this in 2012 to the last 2 years, is there is just so much information out there. And I'm not just talking about books, there's websites, there's mentors, both free and those that you pay for. There is just so much help out there. I think a lot of times when people are starting this endeavor, they're like, I don't have an MBA. I don't know how to start a business. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Well, good news. There's all sorts of stuff out there. There's free college courses, actually. Like you can actually take courses from even reputable universities like Harvard, and you can take a business class, and it's
Right.
free. I'm trying to remember the name of that particular website that does it. It'll probably come to me a little bit later.
Yeah.
Um, there's just a lot of help and information out there. There's SCORE, which has a lot of business volunteers as well. There's mentors through that. There's networking opportunities. They have all sorts of just video courses for you. And so if you don't know what you're doing, it's fine because you can learn. You just have to, learn at a pace that doesn't overwhelm you. But this is all stuff that's, learnable. And just because you learn doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to totally do it. Like I have taken the time to learn about billing, what the different billing codes are, how to maximize the billing for the work that I'm doing, I still don't want to be a biller.
Yeah.
But it's good to know that. It's good to have that information to know what to look for example, when you're looking to hire a biller or when you're looking to hire like a medical assistant, for example, to know all that stuff. So,
Right.
yeah, I'd say that's a big one.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good idea to know those things, because what if your biller quits one day or your front
Mhm.
office person quits one day? Then at least you know how to limp by until you can get another person in that spot. And when you don't know anything, then it's harder for you to oversee those areas too. Like, we want to trust everybody's doing their job, but in reality, sometimes you got to just kind of peek in every once in a while, make sure things are going okay, and then able to step back out. And if you have no idea how
Yeah.
billing even works, then how are you going to know if there's something not right? Right. So,
And there's one other thing I thought about, and that is the financial upside of it too.
mhm,
So in my personal life, I actually I grossed in my business the same amount I make in a year in my full-time job. So doing part-time at business, just doing weekday evenings and one weekend day, I made as much money as working full-time at my regular day job. Now, of
mhm,
course, that doesn't take into account things like benefits. I understand that. But the point is that if you're willing to work hard, if you want, depends on your goals, and everybody wants this, you could potentially make at least 2x your salary, even 3x,
mhm.
be 4x, depending on how hard you want to work, because you're getting so much more back from the insurance companies and what you're grossing in your business.
Right. That somebody else was taken before.
Right. That nobody else is like, taking.
Yeah. And the
Exactly.
benefits are there, right? I mean, you obviously you're not getting PTO, but if you're making that much money, you don't need the PTO. You pay for your own time off, right? Like
Right.
you have that money there. And then benefits, sometimes a partner can carry the benefits for you, or getting insurance on your own is not the cheapest thing in the world, but it can be done. You can get your own insurance policies, pay for your own 401k and stuff. And if you're making 2 or 3 times what you're making in your job, then that's something that you don't need to be afraid of, right? Losing those benefits like that. So you can take those on yourself, and you get to take the tax write off of having the health insurance and that kind of stuff as well. You touched a little bit about financial stuff. Um, Financial planning, I think is vital for any practice. What should
Yes.
someone know about the financial side of starting your private practice? When they get going, what are some of the things they should be thinking about as far as finances go?
You have to be willing to spend money on getting the right people. In my opinion, having an excellent quality biller is extremely important so that you're regularly having revenue coming into the business. It's important to have a good CPA, somebody who's very experienced, that's going to help with your tax savings in the business, a healthcare attorney to make sure that you pass all the regulations you need. In terms of following finances, I think QuickBooks is very useful. Electronic way of doing that.
Mhm.
I check the account on a regular basis, but I think it's also important to have a business plan. And so I actually had a mentor that helped me work on a business plan. I actually had a marketing plan as well.
Awesome.
And those are all things I really use to implement. So, I mean, ultimately, you want to be spending less than what you're bringing in, right? I mean, that's kind of obvious. And I think a lot of times people don't want to focus and think about the money, but the money is really the oxygen for the business.
Mhm.
If something happens where the money stops coming in, your business kind of closes. It's kind of like how it goes. Like a restaurant locally that I kind of liked suddenly closed. I don't know their situation, but my guess is they probably ran out of money and they couldn't pay their bills and they had no choice but to close abruptly. That's probably what
Right.
happened, right?
Mismanagement. Yeah, I think, and when you talked about earlier about making 2 times, 3 times what you normally make, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
Some people could see that money coming in, like, oh, I can spend on this, I can spend on that.
yeah,
And I think sometimes you kind of have to step back and go, wait a minute, I can't spend every dollar that comes into my account. I need to allocate some things for taxes. I need to allocate some things for a rainy day if I get sick. Because if you get sick, no money's coming in, right? Unless you got other folks working for you that are help sustaining things. So you really have to have that business plan. Where do you want to be in a
hmm
year from now, 5 years from now, even 10 years from now? What are
right.
your goals so you can keep your eye on the prize? but also keep that money, some money off to the side, don't
Mhm.
spend it, but just kind of, have a little nest egg there, invest, whatever, talk to a good investor, and just really, keep your mind focused. It's a little different, right? A little shift from going to work for someone. I mean, you should be financially thinking about that stuff when you're working for somebody, but when you're working on your own, all the money that's coming in, you're the director of all of that and trying to figure out where you need to allocate what and how
Yeah.
much you need to save and all that kind of stuff.
I'm a strong believer in having an emergency fund. For
Mhm.
me, I have both a personal emergency fund and a business emergency fund because you just never know what's going to happen. You're going to run into situations. I ran into a situation a couple of months ago with a notorious health insurance company where something happened. There was a glitch in their system, and it was like 2 to 3 months before I got paid by them. I
Yeah.
finally did, and luckily, that's not that's not the insurance the majority of my patients carry. But what if it was?
Yeah.
And so, what if you're in a situation again? When the cash flow dies, that's when your business is in trouble. That's when you're potentially in danger.
Hmm.
Especially if, let's say, if you have employees, guess what? You have to pay your employees no matter what, whether the income comes in or not. Like you have somebody working for you, you can't just go to them and be like, well, the insurance company didn't pay me. I'm working with them. They said they'll have it resolved in about 6 weeks. So I'll pay in 6 weeks. You can't do that. In fact, it's probably illegal in most states, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's always that you always want to make sure that cash flow is coming in. You don't want to be in a situation where you have to borrow the money at a ridiculous interest rate to try to make
Mhm.
payroll. Obviously, some businesses do that, but if you can avoid that, if you can avoid interest payments, that's really ideal. And
Yeah.
I
Cause that
think
can spiral out of control too. Doing
and I
something
think
like
the
that. Get you.
oh yeah, and I think the other thing to think about in expenses is also you want to treat differently like a one-time expense versus a recurring expense. When you're
Hmm.
looking at doing something that's a recurring expense, you have to especially try to be as frugal as you can because that's an expense that's just going to be ongoing and ongoing, ongoing. Maybe you want to do a one-time expense, like I splurged in this awesome desk that I have here. It's a standing desk and everything. That's a one-time expense. This desk will hopefully last me probably 2 to 3 decades, right? That's
Right.
different than a recurring expense you don't think about, like an EHR. An EHR could be anywhere from, in my experience, 150 to $800. You're gonna be dropping $800. You better make sure it's really, really worth it because that's going to really eat into your costs on a regular basis.
Hmm. I've seen them go up to $1,200. That's crazy, especially when you're first
Um,
starting out. You don't even have any patients coming in the door, and you're spending $1,200 a month already on your EHR. That can get real expensive real quick.
yeah.
So, yeah, those are it's important. Um, so, advice would you give someone that was considering starting their private practice? We've touched on a few things. Any extra advice that you would want to give someone?
Yeah, plenty of things. I think first thing is if you have a partner, someone who's important in your life, make sure you have that conversation. Make sure that they are on board
That's great.
because
Yeah.
that first year could be challenging. So I had that conversation with my wife, and she's been absolutely fantastic this year. It's also meant making sacrifices. As I told her the other day, last year was actually being purposely out of balance. I was working 2 jobs. I didn't have as much time. I couldn't spend quite as much time with her.
Mm.
We definitely scheduled date nights to make that happen. This year is bringing it more into balance, right? I'm going to be focusing more on the business. I no longer have my day job, but there's always going to be a bit of that sacrifice. And you want to make sure that person is on board with you. Otherwise, that can lead to friction. That could potentially lead to fights. All right. So I think that's really, really important. Second thing is getting a mentor. I've learned this, and this has led to me having success in many areas of my life. So, for example, I used to serve my local city council. Thank God I don't do that anymore. But one of the things that I did when I was looking to run for the city council is I talked with past and current council members. I interviewed them for an hour and I asked them everything. And one of the questions I asked is, what are some of those regrets that you have? What are those things you did that was a waste of time and a waste of money? And when I was starting my business, I did the same thing. Any friends I had that had a private practice or had a successful business, I talked with them, interview them. There's also lots of opportunities online. I mean, from podcasts,
Mhm.
Score is fantastic for that. Your company is actually very helpful for that. I'm sure we're going to be talking about that later, but
Yeah.
that Facebook group you run is fantastic, and a lot of the services that you provide. So whether you're lucky enough to get a mentor for free or a mentor you have to pay for, you're gonna need mentors. Same thing with a business plan. Like, yes, I made a business plan, but not as good as having that business coach. Or having that marketing coach. Now I'm very, and it's all, you should also look and see what's available for free in your area. For example, the county that I live in, taxpayer dollars paid for it. It's not technically free. My taxpayer dollars paid for it, but still, I took advantage of it. I have, let's see if we can show it. You see my camera if you can see it.
Yeah, get the little
marketing plan. Oh,
yeah. It's the background. I think that's caused it to.
Background effects, none. There we go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, nice.
Print it out. Telemental Associates marketing plan, and I'm going to be printing out my business plan as well. For example.
Yeah, I think small business association too will help.
Exactly.
A lot of have a small business association will help. Sometimes you can get funding through them too. There's grants and stuff that you can, if you're a grant writer, that I am not. But there's a lot of different resources financially, business. Well, you just got to find them. Right. You know, to take a little bit of time to find those, but not being afraid to reach out and use those people to help you. And I think sometimes, you know, you talked about the mentorship, even a life coach, a business coach, you know, that they're mentoring you, but someone that's going to be that rah person for you when you're not feeling so rah when it comes to your business, because, you know, running a business is not for the faint of heart. It's hard work. And I think I love what you said about having your wife on board with you. I've seen this lead to divorce. I've had a provider back to me and said, you know, I'm getting a divorce. I was like, oh my gosh. They were like, the stress of everything was just too much. And I said, it happens. You know, I think having, you know, that open dialogue with your whole family, you know, letting everybody know that, hey, this is what I'm going to be doing, and it's going to be a little stressful, but we're going to get through it. Please talk to me. You know, let's have that dialogue. If you're feeling a certain way or whatever, let's talk about it. So that you can keep those personal, things in check, and also taking time for you. That's important too, because this is stressful sometimes. And if you're burning the candle at both ends and working another job and trying to get this going and maybe a family life and kids and everything, and you're just not taking any time for yourself, that's a problem too. You got to be able to check out and do you for a little bit, you know?
And then one thing I would also say is careful who you get advice from. Okay. I learned this actually from Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey is really good fan. He runs a financial show, a very famous guy. His stuff's everywhere. I'm sure you've probably heard of him. One of the things he said, one of the things he says I love is, why are you getting advice from broke people? Which is funny. But the truth is, what is he really saying? He's really saying that, okay, here I am a multi-millionaire, very successful. I'm giving you financial advice on how you can be successful. And you're choosing to get your advice from someone who isn't financially successful. It doesn't mean they're not a bad person. I'm sure they actually mean well. But the point is, you want to get advice from someone who's already done what you're looking to do. And so if you're looking for advice on getting a private practice, you shouldn't be getting it from a W-2 employee. Doesn't mean that they're bad people or anything like that. I'm sure they're nice people and great, but I'm telling you right now, it's a totally different mindset when you're a business owner versus a W-2 employee. Absolutely. It really is, it's really eye-opening. And so,
I agree. Yeah. I think on that same note too is, don't let people naysay you either. If they've never started their own private practice, and then you're excited, and you're telling them about starting your private practice, and they're like, oh, the market's saturated, or, you know, I've heard this, or I've heard that. And you got those negative Nancys out there, right? And you're just like, they pop your balloon, and you're sitting there like, well, I shouldn't do it. Because we all have that self-doubt right in the back of our head. Well, maybe you're not smart. Maybe you can't do it. Don't listen to them.
And that's an excellent point too. I mean, that's one of the things I hate hearing. The market is saturated. That could very well be the case, but that has nothing to do with why you're not successful, right? If you think about burger joints, that market's saturated. I mean, there's a McDonald's everywhere. Exactly. And yet they're still doing well. Why? Because they have excellent marketing. And of course, they built up a brand, of course, too. But the point is that even if the market is saturated, there's still patients out there. They're just choosing to go to other places rather than you. Why is that? And if you can answer that, then all of a sudden you're going to be successful in getting patients. And it could be a marketing issue. It could be something else. But I don't like the whole idea of, okay, the market is saturated.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. Was the market saturated? No, because we know, like, what, 1 in 3, it was 1 in 4, but I think it's 1 in 3 probably since COVID people have mental health issue. And so that means, you know, that's a lot of people out there that need help. And like you said, marketing is huge when you're doing your private practice. That's where your biggest money is going to be going over your first, I probably say at least 8 months, maybe even longer of starting your private practice. That's where a lot of your money goes, is for marketing, because it doesn't do any good just to have a website out there and like, okay, well, I'm waiting for people to come. It doesn't happen like that. It takes time and everything to get that going. But yeah, you mentioned McDonald's. Most of the time there's Burger King across the street and they're both open. So, and then place, right down the road. So
another point I wanted to add on in terms of the marketing too is, I think the mistake a lot of people make is they try to copy everybody else. They go online and they see, oh, this looks like a really nice website. I'm going to create a website like them and I'm going to have their same success. I think the key to having good marketing is to think about how can you differentiate yourself from everybody else. So let's say the market is saturated. It is. So when somebody is in trouble, they're in emotional pain, they're looking for help, what are you going to do to differentiate yourself from everybody else? So for me, obviously, just being Black differentiates me. There's some patients, they want to see an African-American provider. Okay, that's one thing. I don't need to say anything about it. Just show my picture. Differentiates. That's one point to kind of help. I personally like evening and weekend appointments. I treat people with ADHD. I have ADHD myself, and we're night owls. And it was an experiment, and to my that's my cat. It was an experiment, and to my surprise, people love 8 p.m. appointments.
Oh, they do. They like that.
Now, when I'm saying that, there are some people who are going to hear that and be like, I'm going to do what Gerard does. I'm only going to do evening and weekend appointments. That may or may not work for you, especially if you're not a night person. Don't do that. But look at what can you do to differentiate yourself from everybody else, and make sure that it really speaks to the patient. The marketing has to speak to them. So I know that when I first started my business, my niche was burnt out professionals. And I think I picked that. Depression, anxiety, ADHD. And what I found from a year in practice, at least for me, most of my patients are coming in for ADHD and anxiety. Depression is probably in like 3rd place, and nobody comes in for burnout. Nobody. So guess what?
But those things lead to burnout.
Exactly.
All of those things lead to burnout.
Right, exactly. But that's not resonating for people, and so I adjusted my marketing. Like, listen to the results that you are getting and adjust your marketing accordingly. And do it in such a way that you differentiate yourself from other people. And that's going to be really the key.
Well, I think too, doing what you like.
Well,
Don't do something because it's going to make you more money, or you think it's going to make you more money, or so-and-so does it and they're really, really successful. So I'm going to go, for example, ADHD, right? If you have prescribing stimulants and you don't like doing that kind of stuff, then why would you put yourself out there as an ADHD provider, right? But if you love it, if that's your niche and you're like, I really like treating people with ADHD, or maybe it's ADHD and autism, or just really the neurodivergent population, then put yourself out there and do that. But if you do it because of the money, right, you're going to not be very happy. I've seen people make themselves the expert at a lot of different things. Like maybe they're bipolar, that's their niche, and they are like, they've studied everything. They know everything there is to know about bipolar disorder. But yeah, finding that little niche. If you see kids, that's huge.
Oh my God, yeah. Holy cow, that's huge.
Not a lot of people want to see kids. So if you see kids, then that's going to help you a whole lot. But if you don't want to see kids, then, don't see kids. So there's just a lot of little factors there, but I think you hit the nail on the head there talking about.
And that's also a referral opportunity too. If you don't want to see kids, refer them to someone who does.
Right.
And have a relationship with them, because they're going to have patients that they don't feel comfortable seeing or don't want to, and they can refer them to you.
Well, but what also happens with kids? Kids have ADHD. Guess what? Mom or dad probably has ADHD too.
Yeah.
If I focus on kids only, then I can say, hey, Gerard can see you guys, he's going to help, with the adult population of this. I can treat your child, but I don't treat adults. So now they're referring back to you. So you've got a 2-way street there. And the same thing with therapists. If you find a pediatric therapist, let them know, hey, I'm available to see adults. I don't really see kids. But I think people got to get the idea there, right? That there's a lot of different ways you can do this. There's not just one way. Think outside the box. Your burnout thing was a great example of another thing, even leading to that, like first responders, right? And trying to reach that population. I've talked to people about having meetings like at the police department or at the fire department, or nurses, nursing stations and stuff. And you can gather a lot of clients that way, just talking to people, thinking outside that box, and getting people to be comfortable with you.
And I think what I'd add is if a marketing tactic is not working, be okay with stopping it. So one idea I had, I did a lot of things that you talked about. One idea I had that crashed and burned was, well, people who work out care about their health. And so I got contacted by somebody,
Okay.
put an ad on a workout, those workout videos in a gym.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
put an ad on the workout videos for a gym. They were doing a deal where it was like for 6 months, and it wasn't too expensive. And I got 0 referrals from that. So the guy called me back saying, would you want to continue? And I'm like,
Like that.
well, no. And he's like,
Yeah.
well, we don't guarantee that you're going to get yada yada from it. I was like, that's fine. But I'm like thinking to myself, these are my marketing dollars. They're not infinite. You
Right.
don't want to be wasting money. I mean, you obviously don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
if something is not working, be okay with being like, okay, you know what?
Pivot.
I gotta do something different.
Yeah. Pivot and do something different. It's like I tell people it's kind of like fishing. Have you ever been fishing?
Yes, actually.
So, it's all about what bait to use, what fishing hole, what time of
Yeah,
day is it. I mean, there's so many variables, right? But once you find that fishing hole where the fish are biting, that's where you stay, and you keep putting
exactly.
money there. You don't keep fishing the hole you're not catching any fish on. So
Yeah.
it's kind of the same way. You're working on catching those fish. On a silly analogy, but it works. Where do you see the future of mental health care going? Do how are you
Well,
preparing for any changes? We talked a little bit about the Ryan Haidt Act earlier, but where do you see it going?
you know, where I hope it's going is I hope that it's really gonna, fully embrace telehealth. I feel like telehealth is not embraced as much as it should. I feel that a lot of places are still mostly brick and mortar, and we can't do telehealth to make the patients happy. You know what I mean? But I really think that telehealth has the opportunity to just increase accessibility, just from people who don't have to take time off of work. They can, for example, if they want to, go in their car, they have their privacy, do their 20 to 30-minute appointment, and then they go back to work and they don't have to worry about commuting and things like that.
Right.
I think it'll be really good, for example, for people who live in small towns and rural areas. I mean, I used to work in Wisconsin, and I was in Green Bay, and I had patients who would drive 2 hours to see me. And they love to live in the country. They don't mind doing it, but boy, did I feel bad when I had to call out sick.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
They're already on the road. Yeah.
exactly. And they're like already an hour and a half into their drive, they get the call, and it's kind of awful. That could be eliminated or reduced with telehealth, especially now with the investments we've made at improving rural high-speed internet. I think it's good to use it.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know what the DA is going to do. I really don't. And it's got to be,
Everybody does.
it's more of a question mark because we have a new presidential administration. Who knows what's going to happen there? Obviously, a significant different change in philosophy there. Um, I'm hoping that they're going to support telehealth and allow us to use it to its max potential. I understand the concerns about bad actors who are going to be, turning into pill mills, but we had that before. Florida's kind of notorious for that, for example, of like, these pill mills, and that happened pre-telehealth. So I
Yeah, it could
think what's
happen
going to
it
happen,
could happen in an office. I mean, I don't think it has to
right?
have telehealth. It could happen. You could be a pill mill in a physical office.
Yeah.
So
But yeah, I mean, I would like to see that go with psychiatry. I think there's going to be a lot more access for people who need it. I think there's got to be a lot more privacy.
mhm.
And then there are people who they're hermits. They don't leave. They don't leave their house much, especially someone, let's say, they're agoraphobic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
telehealth can actually be really helpful for them.
Or
And
your elderly population, your
right,
disabled population. It was really difficult for those people to get out and go to an appointment. To take that away from them now, I think is would be a really big disservice to that population of people.
yeah. So I think telehealth is huge, and I think that's going to be really important, and that's where I hope it would go. Now, the other alpha in the room is AI. Oh my goodness, I think we're going to see dramatic changes there. No, I don't think AI is going to replace practitioners. I could be
No.
wrong, but I don't know if people are going to prefer to talk to a chatbot than a person. I don't
No,
know.
I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I don't think it'll happen in our lifetime, hopefully.
Yeah,
But I mean, it's grown a lot. But I think I personally, I would feel kind of weird just talking to some
yeah.
computer that's making some decision on my healthcare. But if they gradually ease us into it, maybe who knows where that'll go. And that kind of leads to my next question, like technology wise, like
Mhm.
what kind of technology do you use in your practice? Do you use AI to help you with charting, or what other technology do you use?
I do. I make sure I use a HIPAA compliant AI client basically, but it's useful for summarizing patients' notes, writing letters for patients, prior authorizations, for example, dealing with that because Lord knows PAs are not fun, and dealing with deals. And so I use it predominantly to reduce paperwork, which has been really helpful. I mean, it's only now that I'm looking to get an administrative assistant. And even now, I'm kind of wondering if I need it yet. I will get it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But with what I've been able to do with AI, to be able to spit out and do these things in like really 2 to 3 minutes, what would previously take 10 to 15 minutes, is unbelievable. And so I think it's going to be a better experience for the patient. That is the number one reason why I chose the EHR I did, which of course is Practice Q. I mean, I really was looking at 5 or 6 different EHRs. I really want one that would automate processes as much as possible. So it's kind of great. I don't have to do a phone calls of people saying, I can't make my appointment, I need to reschedule. I just teach them how to do it on their own, for example. Letter requests, stuff that they need to upload, and that's all HIPAA compliant. Is just like so nice and so important. So
makes it a whole lot easier. And you're using Spruce too, right?
I'm personally not using Spruce. We'll see.
Yeah. My dog barking. He's right behind me.
Yeah. We all have our pets who love to interrupt at the stars of the show.
Yeah. You mentioned a little bit about Silverleaf. And so how did we help you in your journey with all of this, to build your practice? And what would you tell other people that may be on the fence about using us for their practice?
I tell them to use you. First of all, I would just say use it. It was money well spent. I loved it. I used it to pretty much set up my practice queue, which was really great, to really use all of the AI features. You can learn to do that practice queue, but again, this is about the whole idea of outsourcing. Like I was like reading a lot of the articles, learning about what it can do and stuff like that. But you know what? I'm not an expert in this. I wanted to hire someone who can be an expert to set it up for me so I can hit the ground running. And so I had you guys do it. I think you guys did within a month because I actually got the rush service.
Yeah.
I've been less than that. But I was able to like start right at the beginning of January, seeing patients and hit the ground running. And it's held up so nicely. Patients really, really like it. They have an easy time scheduling, having to reschedule, reaching me through the messaging portal. And so it was great. You guys are very responsive, very easy to work with. I really can't say anything else about it. I know that sometimes people complain, oh, the cost, yada, yada. Well, you get what you pay for. And again, this is about, it's a one-time fee. And I was willing to pay for it. You know what? This is something that's going to be helping me down the line for several years. What I've also appreciated, you guys, is you guys have been helpful with just follow-up questions on it. Like I had a particular question about a form, can it be changed or can that happen? And you guys have been really, really helpful for that. You guys don't have to do that, but I really appreciate it because I really see you guys as the experts. So.
Well, we went into this to help you guys, to empower you guys right into private practice. And it would do you a disservice if we did a service for you and then be like, bye, good luck. I don't know, we'll figure it out. So we definitely want people to keep coming back, whether you're spending money on services or whatever. We just want you to be happy with what we did for you, and then also be successful in your practice as well, because we don't want to do all this for you and then you not be successful for some reason or another. So I appreciate that. And yeah, I think we did get you done like in a couple of weeks. I want to say you were really done really fast. So, I mean, I don't really have any other questions. Do you have anything else you would like to tell the audience about starting a private practice, or anything I didn't touch on while we were doing this?
It's worth it. I think what took me the longest in private practice is just accepting that it can be done and it can be successful. I think that's really the first big hurdle. And then once you make that decision, the information is out there, the mentors are out there to have the support that you need. Okay. Yeah. And so I think you have to be really smart about it. You have to make sure this is something that you want to do. It's not for everybody. Some people are just happy being a W-2 employee or independent contractor. There's nothing wrong with that. But if this is something that you really want to take on, I would go into full speed ahead. Just make sure that you have the right information and the right support. All right.
Yeah. Great advice. Great advice. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to do this with us. I appreciate it a whole lot, sharing your story and everything. And yeah, be looking for yourself out on the website somewhere. We'll put you out there.
And if you can hang on after the recording, I'll talk to you about actually the administrative assistance service if you
Yeah,
would.
sure. We can totally do that. So anyway, have a great day. And for all of our followers, come back and we'll have more spotlights with our providers that we've set up. So y'all take care. Have a great day.
All right, thanks.